So we're going to start out this local leadership training with a video excerpt from a Walter Cronkite special done way back in the 60s. It will make you realize how long CISV has been around.
Today we present the story of some international citizens of the world, all of them 11 years old. They come to summer camps from many lands. They live together, they play together. They discover how alike they are, despite different languages, color, national customs. At 11, it is hoped they are old enough to know and too young to hate. This is our story, Too Young to Hate, as the Prudential Insurance Company of America presents the 20th century. This is a children's international summer village in England. The villages were founded by a child psychologist in Cincinnati and by civic leaders around the world. Since 1951, there have been 48 such villages. 11-year-olds from 44 countries have lived together and played together for a month. We filmed them at children's villages in England, Germany, Norway, and at Long Beach, Mississippi, as they discovered that nations may be different, but people are the same the world over. Why are only 11-year-olds picked? We asked the founder of the villages, professor of psychology at the University of Cincinnati, Dr. Doris Twitchell Allen.
But now this age of 11, you see, is the age that comes before adolescence. And in adolescence, a person is busy with adolescence. It is notoriously a turbulent period, a period of contradiction, in contrast to the age of 11, which is a much quieter, more even, well, it is sometimes called a latent period because of its very quietness. The thing that children learn and that we want them to learn is how alike, basically, human nature is. But at the same time, if we want to live together in the world of all of these countries, a world of peace, we must feel at home with differences of culture. Therefore, you must have children who have some stamp of their own culture. And by the age of 11, the children have their own language that they use with facility. They have their own dances and their own table manners by that age. They have their differences of costume. Their rituals have taken on meanings by that time. So the children say at the end of it, oh, I have friends all over the world. And that's what we want them to feel.
Here in this village you may see children living happily, gathered from all parts of earth, sharing joys of countless worth, spreading knowledge really true, sharing through all things we do. Oh, I can I do.
The camps are small, so every child can get to know all the others. It doesn't take long for the initial strangeness to wear off. In a matter of days, there are only children, not countries, in 11-year-old eyes. At the Children's International Summer Villages, every country has a national day. This is Japanese Day in Mississippi. far, some 2,000 11-year-olds have met and made friends at villages in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Later, in their teens, they meet again at reunion camps. They hear from the villages by bulletin. They hear from each other by letter. Now, a flood in India, a train wreck in Japan, a revolt in Latin America may cause youngsters in Philadelphia, Oslo, or Paris to wonder, are my friends all right?
What did you think the camp was going to be like before you came?
Oh, I thought there'd be a sort of road just over there where we'd go riding along. And I thought there'd be a great big swimming pool. And, it's not exactly the same as I imagined, but it's smashing fun.
While I was in Japan, I thought the United States was full of mechanical things, everything automatic. But I found that the United States is like Japan because the USA has lots of woods and natural things, just as in Japan.
You and I should get together, we could have a party. You and I should get together, really have a ball.
For this activity, we will be following leaders Will, Darcy, and Alicia.
So for this activity, you guys have your passports made, which are similar to the passports that CISV International puts out every year. And so basically, you have a bunch of different themes, and so their purpose, content areas, etc. And so you guys are going around to different stations and talking to each station leader about those things, and then your passport gets stamped. We're customs agents.
So what I want to cover with you in this station is the CISV passport, which this is what the example is. And hopefully we can get all of you a passport so that you can have that with you when you're at your program, because it's very helpful to take with you, because people who do not know about CISV, it's sort of a complicated animal, and to explain what it is sometimes is pretty tricky. And this little doohickey gives you all the information you need to know about it. I wanted to introduce you to this booklet that you can have on your person. So one of the most important things that we do in CISV is called Experiential Learning, which is basically just learning by doing. So rather than lecturing to you or to the kids, as I am doing now, we do activities. And the activities are trying to teach people things. So there's different levels of activities in different types of programs. So village activities would be very much more simplistic, perhaps, but they're still teaching concepts to kids. So the classic CISV activity, for an example of this, would be that you give a group of kids a bunch of recyclable materials, and you say, build a town, and they build a town with towers and everything, and then you take them away for some reason, and you knock the tower down, and you bring them back, and you say, oh, well, a war happened, or somebody broke your town, and it's now destroyed. And the kids, of course, are upset because they've just worked for a long time building this town, and then you debrief, which is part of the process of learning by doing. You debrief, you talk to them about how do you feel about that, and why do you think this happened, and what could this represent, which is a war, and how do you think people feel about war, and it's teaching them about that concept. So that's a classic village type activity. We build on activities, so in a program you start out with more simple activities, as we did in this. We started out with name games, right? And we do more light activities, get to know you activities and that kind of thing, and then you build up to that, to more important or more deep content, and eventually you can do simulation activities, which is where you're actually put in a situation that's a sort of a mock situation where you can actually experience something, and then those can be very emotionally charged. So that would be an example of a village simulation activity. They're experiencing their village being destroyed. So the activities get more and more complex or more deep, more emotionally charged as the time goes on. And so that's sort of a progression of activities that happens during a camp. So you wouldn't want to, the first day that the kids arrive, do that activity where you destroy the thing that they built, because that would ruin the trust that you have to develop in your group. So we talk about group dynamics, and group dynamics are important in any program. So the village and the interchange, and it's you build that by doing team building activities early on in the program. So that's really important. Like in your interchange, you guys as the U.S. delegation would be doing team building activities when you do your meeting together to plan for this. You should be doing activities that get people feeling like we're working together as a team, so that they feel bonded to those people before you ever do anything with the other kids, so that you already feel like a group. You have to it's sort of a sensitive thing that you have to gauge. How close are the kids? Are they working together well? Do they feel like they're bonded? And then we can delve into this deeper material. So, but all of this information about the background, the philosophy, and the educational principles of CISV is in this passport. And the other stations are going to tell you what the mission statement is, and what the ask model is, and the progression of activities, which is all stuff that you need to really be super familiar with in order to teach it to the kids, right? So, there we go.
Okay, guys, so we're going to be talking about CISV's Statement of Purpose. Does anyone know what that is? Word for word? Something close.
Is that the inspired action for a more just and peaceful world or something?
Yeah. So CISV educates and inspires action for a more just and peaceful world. And so part of that is taking action. Do you guys have any ideas about how we can inspire our delegates to take action?
Simulations is a good way, just throwing them in there so they can get the experience and learn how they can actually go out and apply it to their real world situations and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that we do in CISV is we always sit in circles. And sitting in circles is a really good way to inspire action because it really encourages discussion. So we try not to stand up and lecture people. We try to have more discussions. And the activities we do are usually experiential activities. So we're not just inspiring action in the future. We're actually inspiring them to take action right now while they're at camp. And I feel like that's a really important part of why CISV is able to educate people, because we're actually taking action while we're at camp. And the other part of the mission statement is that we're inspiring this action for a more just and peaceful world. What is you guys' idea of that more just and peaceful world?
Like no wars, and all the countries being able to come together peacefully and figure out different things rather than fighting over everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and where everyone's born into the same opportunity. It doesn't matter where, when, who.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. So these are just some things to keep in mind, like when you're planning activities, to really always make sure they focus around the mission statement. Always keeping it in mind when you interact with your delegates. Like, what are you inspiring them for, and what are you teaching them? How is this aligned with the CISV mission and the statement of purpose? If you kind of keep that in mind when you're planning these activities and when you are interacting with the kids, your activities will probably inspire that action and make the change that you're hoping to see.
So this station is content areas, and basically what sets CISV camps apart from other summer camps is that they have an educational curriculum that are based on 4 different content areas, which are diversity, conflict and resolution, human rights, and sustainable development. And so in a camp setting, you would have activities that are based on all of the 4 content areas, but every year CISV International rotates between an annual theme, and this year's annual theme is diversity. So a lot of your activities and probably your camp theme is going to be diversity based.
Diversity explores the identity of the individual and asks us to consider ourselves within our own and the wider community.
Diversity activities might be things like the stereotypes activity, where you write down your country's name, and then all of the groups go around and they write down different stereotypes that they've heard about that country, and then you guys talk about it, and more like getting to know about cultures other than your own.
Human rights considers how human rights affect every aspect of our lives and how violations can lie at the root of problems such as poverty, violence, and lawlessness.
There's an activity that is famous in CISV, especially at Village, called Rich and Poor Day, where a few of the campers are dubbed rich and the rest of them are poor, and they're treated very differently based on their status. And that teaches them a lot about human rights and a lot about what's not only what goes on in their camp, but then they relate to the outside world and what is going on globally.
Conflict and resolution helps us understand how conflicts can arise, deliberately or otherwise, and what can be done to help bring a peaceful resolution.
And this is a lot of problem solving, not only within groups, but broader conflict and resolution, especially in older camps. How old are your kids going to be?
14.
14, 15? Okay, yeah. So they might have a lot of conflict and resolution activities as they get older. They become more independent leaders, and they are going to do more of these activities. So a big part of this content area is that it's not conflict resolution, it's conflict and resolution. So not every conflict is resolved, and not every plan of action is necessarily going to work if it's implemented, but it's just about strategizing and problem solving.
Sustainable development looks for integrated ways to promote economic and social well-being while protecting the environment through the responsible use of natural resources.
It's about sustainably thinking about our social impact, our political impact, things like that. It's about making sure that our society as a whole will be able to continue instead of just thinking about the environment.
At my little passport station, we were talking about debriefing and evaluation. So what's the difference?
Are you asking?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Debriefing, you're kind of talking about how they felt about the activity and basically asking confirmation questions like what you were covering and whatnot. And then evaluation is they basically rate the activity and tell you how much they liked it,
enjoyed it.
Yeah, so you can hopefully figure out better ways to do the activity in the future,
That's
or
good feedback.
if you should continue doing it in the future.
Well, yeah, that was spot on. Debriefing's all about how the kids felt, the morals of the activity, what you're trying to impart, and evaluation is basically just, was it good, was it bad? So what's some ways that you can, since the evaluation is the easier one, what's some ways you can do an evaluation?
Asking them what do they think, how do they think the whatever you were doing went, seeing if it was something, it would be something that they would do maybe in the future if they were in your position. Okay.
And you can ask a few different questions, like how much they enjoyed it, how much they learned, how much they got out of it, how relevant it was to the topics you're doing.
So you, so you're saying you ask them questions and then they raise their hand, and they tell you?
You can do it a few ways, fist to 5, negative 5,
rating
4,
it.
3, 2, yeah.
Good. Fist to 5, real simple way, easy way to see how the group's feeling. Another one is dead bug, which is everyone's lays on their back. If they really liked it, then they move around a lot. If they don't, they just stay still. So yeah, evaluation is very much yes, no. You can have a sliding scale, but it's not much discussion. It's very much, as you guys were saying, good or bad. So give me some ways that you can run a debriefing.
So you can be broad or kind of specific. Basically, you can, for broad questions, be like, how did this activity make you feel? Or more specifically, when so-and-so did this, how did it make you feel, and why do you think they did that? And
Yeah, I think you can go in with a few different questions, just general reactionary questions, and then just based on how the conversation's going, you can narrow down just a few questions just off the bat make sure that you're, asking like relevant to the topic, make sure you get like a lot of feedback back from a lot of the kids. It's also important to make sure that not the same people are just answering every single question.
Do you think you guys should be asking yes or no questions or open-ended questions?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, maybe start with yes and no questions, and then as people open up to answering questions more, because at first it's kind of hard to get kids to raise their hands and actually answer what you're asking.
Yep.
But then as they move forward and open up, start asking the more open-ended questions, so you can really see how they felt about the activity.
Good, yeah. So you want to start off, as you were just saying, you want to get the kids comfortable with expressing their feelings, especially in front of each other. Because talking about how something made you feel in front of a group is scary for anyone. It's scary for me. And so getting them comfortable, getting them open is important. And yes or no questions are an okay way to start off, but you do want to end up with open-ended questions so that you facilitate that discussion. This debriefing is very organic. You want it to be a conversation. And while you guys should go in with a plan, with some questions set up, if the kids are going in a new direction, that is awesome. Because they are thinking, they're critically thinking about what they've just done. And if they are considering things that we haven't considered, great. If they are coming up with a moral that you guys may not agree with, that's okay. Unless it's, outside of CISV's, okay things. If they're like, hey guys, let's all be racist. No, curve that one. But if it's something that you may not necessarily agree with, that is okay. People have different worldviews than us. And so you don't want to crush those things. Now, you do definitely want them to come, you want to lead them, because you guys are leaders, and guide them back into the conversations, the meaningful questions that you guys want to ask. But if they're exploring a new path, go down it, because you guys might find the best debriefing questions that way. If you're finding that no one wants to talk, how would you deal with that?
Sometimes that might be when it's easier to split into small groups and then get them to talk, and once you put them back into the bigger groups, they already have the ideas in their head, and so they might be more willing to open up to the questions.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Both those situations are probably going to happen at some point. Be ready for both. Remember, don't shut people down. Just, nudge them. Bring them back to where you guys want to be going. You guys are the leaders, so lead.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm going to be going over learning by doing and the ask model.
And I'm Carrie, and I'm going to be helping Catherine explain the experiential learning and the ask model.
So learning by doing is really how we teach kids all the different aspects of CISV and everything we want them to learn at camp. So instead of sitting here lecturing about, be kind, be friendly, be nice to different cultures, here are the different cultures that are here today. You're really kind of putting them in the middle of the situation and really having them act it out more so. We really like to do skits and stuff to try, to say hey, what would you do in this situation? Really have the kids do every single thing that you want them to learn.
The kids can experience issues going on in the world through simulations like the game of rich and poor, where some of the kids are rich and some of the kids are poor. So they get to talk about these big issues and experience them for themselves in a safe environment. So the way we visualize learning by doing is through this little do, reflect, generalize, apply graphic. Do is you do an activity like rich and poor, and then after the activity, what we do in CISV is debrief the activity. So talk about it afterwards. And then we have people reflect on that. So the way we structure our questions in the debrief is reflect, generalize, apply. So reflect is, what did we do? How did you feel? What happened? And then generalize is, where do you see this happening in the world or in your country? And then apply is going out into the real world and doing something about it. Maybe how can you help in your community? Sometimes the apply doesn't happen for months or even years later. So even an 11-year-old who may not seem to get much out of the activity may really get it a little later on. The other way we think about what we learn is through attitude, skills, and knowledge. So attitudes is how you think and behave, things like being open-minded, flexible, willing to include people. Skills are the ability to do stuff like communicate, be a leader, reflect on yourself, or solve problems. And then knowledge is knowing things about population, communities, environmental issues, and stuff like that.
So basically, when you're sitting there planning an activity for your kids, you really want to streamline what attitude, skills, and knowledge you want them to take away from it. And then that kind of helps you figure out, okay, what do I need to do to where my kids will take away all these different things.
So at your camp, you will have a PDPEF, which is an evaluation tool to see the attitude, skills, and knowledge that the kids have actually gained to measure their progress.
You don't want to like really spell it out for them, but as a leader, you're going to be able to see exactly how they take away from all these activities.
So this is an activity about personality types, and so what you're going to do is you're going to fill out this questionnaire, and it's going to have questions for you about how you would react in certain situations, what sort of tendencies you have, and then when you're finished with the questionnaire, you're going to score all of your items, and then based on your score, you're going to get a color, either orange, gold, blue, or green, and that's going to tell you a little bit more about your own personality and especially about your leadership style. Now we're going to just a really quick bird's eye view. Now we're going to have a debrief. You don't always have to have the debrief right after you have the activity. You can sometimes let it simmer and do a few activities about the same thing and then have one debrief. So that's what we're going to do right now. So how do you guys feel about how you scored?
And I think it's useful when you're dealing with other people to kind of realize there's different styles, and if you're dealing with a certain type of person, you might have to step back a little and just realize that maybe that person you have to operate a certain way to be able to deal with them. It might help you understand and work more effectively together.
So I think definitely realizing that about other people and who you're working with, and what your strengths and weaknesses are when you're working in a group is really important.
Do you think that there are some types that you would work better with, some types that you might butt heads with more? How do you think that you would navigate those types of differences, especially in a leader group?
Well, I'm a gold, and that really reflects in all the organizations I'm in, because I always get the positions where I hold people accountable. I'm not necessarily the leader position, but I'm always the one where if someone's not doing their part or needs to get called in, I'm always the one who kind of has those harder conversations. So I guess I don't really get along, but I really don't prefer to work with people who are very, we'll get to it when we get to it, or there's not a structured plan, it's just not too head in the clouds, come on, let's get something on paper. So
yeah, I was pretty close all around. I tested highest for orange, and then my co-leader Darcy tested highest for gold, and every other I got orange and green, and she got gold and blue, and so it's basically the opposite. But I think that maybe they could be complementary to each other, because it would be one thing if we both had the exact same leadership style. Maybe some kid doesn't respond well to that kind of style, and it's helpful to have someone who maybe is coming from the opposite end of this spectrum. So that was kind of cool.
We've done camps together in the past, and there's never been a conflict with that. Caroline is not a gold, and we live together, and I think we end up complimenting each other, because I'll remind her to do the structural stuff and day to day you need to be doing this, but then she'll remind me to chill a little bit and relax. So yeah,
I think that each one definitely has its own value. With me as being the green, I do think as a big picture and being conceptual, and I am for the most part try to be pretty calm and cool, but I do like to be a perfectionist, so I like to take my time. I don't like to go too far into a schedule, but if I don't have the gold who is on a schedule and is organized, I'll take 2 extra weeks on a project if I can. Everybody has their own spot, and even though it might not be exactly how you want or need it, don't think of the other person being different as a bad thing. They're really there to push you along to get you to what you need to be.
When you have 11 different leaders and staff and JCs, and they're all trying to plan one camp's worth of activities, how do you think that these would come into play, and how would that affect your navigation of the planning and other facilitating in general, Kaylin?
Kind of like going off of what like Preston said, I think like it's best when you have a mix of personalities in sort of a team setting like that, especially when we're about to be in like with all of our leaders. It's good that we have different personalities, because I think the best team is one that's comprised of all four of those colors, not just like all golds, you know, because what if we have like all blues, then you don't have the golds to keep us on schedule, or if we have all the golds, then we're not sensitive like blue, you know what I mean? So I think it's good that you have people of different mixes.
I think it's also really important to just like recognize the diversity between people and like help them focus on their strengths, instead of trying to get everyone in a group to play the same role. Identifying what your strengths are, having those like translate into different responsibilities for different group members.
And like how Will said, some kids don't respond to certain personalities. Like I know at all the camps I've gone to, I've gotten closer to certain leaders than others, and I feel like that's a good thing to have all the different personalities, because it is such a strange experience, especially for like the village age kids, and so it's helpful to have different types of leaders that they can relate to.
So you're divided into two groups, and so each group is going to be given an egg. And your job is to come up with a protective covering for the egg. And the goal is that the egg should not break when I drop it from the third story. And so you can use anything you want. We're getting recyclable materials, and Catherine's going to bring those, and you've got about 10 minutes to protect your egg in any way you can, and then we'll test the eggs. Okay? Break.
Three, two, one, drop!
All right, so I heard that the eggs didn't break.
They
Both
survived.
of you. Both eggs. Good job. Very good. Yay. So, how did you feel about this activity? Was it fun for you?
Yes. It was.
You like that? Okay. So, do you have some idea of why we do this activity?
To take care of these children we're bringing to camp.
Yes, exactly. So those represented the children, and you have to protect them, and so they're the most valuable thing to their parents, right?
Yes.
There's nothing more precious in this world than your child, and to know that that is such a precious person to the parents, there's nothing more important, and to just keep that in the forefront of your mind at all times. So, what kinds of special things that do you need to think about when you're taking care of kids, do you think?
They're younger than you, so they don't think, you know, as rationally as you, so you need to stay patient and not get frustrated.
Very true, very true. What else? When you're thinking about keeping a kid really safe, we talked in our breakout about the fact that maybe you should meet with each parent's family ahead of time. And I gave you a list of questions that if you've had a chance to look at it is really pretty long, and you maybe think that a lot of that is unnecessary, but the better you know the parents, the better the parents know you, the more they know that you appreciate all of their, their kids' little idiosyncrasies, and you know that when they're tired they need to have this pillow and sleep on their left side and blah blah blah. Whatever. What do you think, Carol? What would be a particular when you send an 11-year-old off to camp?
For us, there were some eating issues, like Stacey had some dietary limitations. And I don't think the leader really believed me. I think she just thought I was just, that once Stacey got there, she'd eat whatever she wanted, really. But when she got there, she called me to camp and she goes, I think you were right. What do I do now? So, I mean, just any kind of medical situation, dietary restrictions, all that kind of stuff. The more you can understand,
the more you know.
Yes,
the more you know, right? And when your own child gets sick, and think about yourself when you're sick, you've got particular things you do, right? So it may be that you always want to take Tylenol, or you always have chicken soup, like Carrie was saying, or whatever it is. If you can understand that about the children ahead of time, that's really helpful, because invariably you'll get over to XYZ country, and which is what happened to me. Yeah, we don't give that over the counter. We don't have had a girl with yeast infection. You can't get antifungals at a pharmacy like you can in the U.S. You can't. All they have is homeopathic treatments in a lot of countries, for example. Bring that with you. If your kid has an issue that they always gets upset with their stomach and they take a Tums or whatever it is, you better be sure you bring that, because other countries don't have the same things. Right? So anyway, the point of the activity is, this is a very precious, and when you are a parent, then you'll appreciate how obsessed you get with your child in particular. But it's super important.
All right, that's it for now. Have fun at your national training.